Okay, so for part two, then, so we can analyze social structure, social status, and many different other. Just take that same scenario of the classroom and then transpose the social structure notion, the social statuses, social roles to your other relationships. There's a social structure in our culture for being a boyfriend, girlfriend. There's a social structure set in place for being a husband and a wife. And once we're into those statuses, then our culture has specified the rights and obligations of each role in our interaction with each other. So that's why we're able to. And one of my favorite chapters is on deviance, and uh, social status is put there in those social roles so that uh, the one way that we can recognize when let's say your boyfriend is misbehaving or is not doing what he should do, it's not making you happy. Uh, and what you're really saying is that you're recognizing deviance, that he's not doing what a proper boyfriend should be doing. Right? If we didn't know the rights and obligations of these status, if we didn't know them, then we would not be able to recognize deviant behavior. You got to have those what we call those social boundaries there in place. Those expectations act as social boundaries, so that when we recognize something that's out of place, we may define it as deviant, and then from there we may define whether we want to stay in that social interaction or whether it's safe to stay in that interaction or to forgive that mishap. But nonetheless, those status expectations, those social roles, set the stage, if you will, for our behavior to conform. And I said at the beginning that one of the things that students don't like about sociology is that because it shows that for the most part, most of our behavior on a daily basis is conformity. We conform just about 99% of the time. And if we don't conform, and we get labeled as being deviant, then sanctions are brought to bear to bring us back into line. Whether that's just a slap on the wrist or a prison death sentence, even, to get people to, even the death sentence is sort of symbolic representation for the rest of the population to see that these are the far out limits, that certain behaviors, this is what will happen to you. And so we're always under social pressure to conform to our the groups that we belong to. Even within a deviant subculture, you're expected to conform your behavior to the members' norms and rights and obligations of the group. So for most of the time, for most of our behaviors, kind of like that Bob Dylan song, we got to serve somebody, and that's sort of a truism that no matter what situation we're going to fall into, we're going to be involved in some type of social structure involving statuses within the group, and we're going to have to conform. And when we don't, then we pay consequences. Uh, so this is a really this for me this area on social structure, social status, social roles is really the heart. It's very extremely sociological in nature, and it really shows that link between individuals and society. It really links the individual into society through. If you want to ask where does the individual actually get hooked into society, it's through taking up these social roles, these social statuses that are attached to larger social structures, that is, interaction with other statuses. And we have to conform our behavior in order to become competent in our everyday interactions with others, right? So the more you study and the more you look at it, and the more examples you can look at, the better it is. I mean, the clearer it becomes. It's a set of concepts that can be used to look at almost any set of relationships, anything you think of between boss and worker, military organization. You have to conform your rights and obligations to your if you're a platoon leader. Then those above you, you have your rights and obligations to your superior above you, and all of that's been created before you came along or any others in the organization a long time ago, right? Sometimes the social status, sometimes the social roles have changed, expectations over time as culture changes. Uh, those expectations will change, but they tend to be there nonetheless. Um, so going, I've done a lot, I've jumped a lot of the chapter from that point of view. Then I just want to lastly talk about, and it's really something that if you were in class, I would have you do some stuff with this, but I'm gonna have you do it anyway. Uh, the dramaturgical model of social interaction was developed by a well-known, famous sociologist, symbolic interactionist by the name of Erving Goffman in the 1960s. Uh, he developed this theory of social interaction, dramaturgical model. And it really and truly, what Goffman was trying to do, what he was saying was that, yes, we have social structure, social status, social roles, but he said that sounds so abstract and it's very static, if you will. Theoretically, it makes a lot of sense and it has certainly its usefulness, but his question was, what really motivates people's behavior? What really motivates people's behavior on an everyday basis to conform their behaviors to what is expected? Sometimes it can be the threat. Sometimes it can be the threat of sanctions. Uh, but many times, Goffman says that we're highly social animals. We like to, for the most part, we like to receive positive feedback from our environment. So the way in which we conform, he says, is we try to put our best foot forward. Yes, we're playing out social. Let me go back to the classroom example. When the students come to class, or when you get ready to come online, or let's say you're getting ready to walk into your classroom, you don't stop at the door and say, "Oh, okay, I'm getting ready now to change into my student status. Let me look through my little book on my social role expectations for this situation." But we don't think like that, right? Nobody does. Not even professors in sociology think like that, right? We may be aware of it, but we don't think that way. So he's asking, how does everyday people end up realizing the social statuses and the social structure, social roles? How do we do that? It's not built into us. It's not. It's not biologically ingrained. So he says, well, it's through socialization, but before you read this chapter and this discussion, you probably never heard of this, the logic of social structure, social statuses, how they interplay with each other. But you've been doing it since you were a little kid. You've been doing all this. So Goffman says, well, how did this go about? What are the mechanisms, processes the individuals go through? He says that for the most part, whatever situations, groups we belong to, encounters, we try to put our best foot forward. So there's three different concepts really that make up the dramaturgical model. One, he says, is impression management. Impression management, just looking at the book's definition, impression management is the process by which people in social situations manage their settings, their dress, their words, and their gestures to correspond to the impression they are trying to make or the image they are trying to project. So what Goffman is saying here is that we all involve ourselves in impression management, and we will hone our impressions in a certain situation because of the context. We take that into consideration. We take the situation, the definition of situation in hand, and then we try to curb our behavior appropriately for that situation in order to win social tokens from our audience. let's go a little bit further. Impression management, dramaturgy. What is that? It says it's a model in which social interaction is viewed as if it were a theater. People are as if they were actors, and roles as if they were performances before an audience in a particular setting. So Goffman takes serious the notion that all of life is simply a stage on which we are just actors playing at life, right? All the world is a stage, and we are but actors. He takes this very seriously, and he says in order to realize the social order, if you will, and the social patterns that we establish, it's based on dramaturgy. It's based on the fact that when we're in certain settings, certain public areas of our lives, the front stage, he calls it, being out on the stage, we involve ourselves, we act out our impression management to the best of our abilities. And that can be done both maybe managing the stage setting, might be your clothing, it might be how you dress, because we try to convey a certain message about ourselves by how we dress. It could be our nonverbal gestures, um, how we, our posture and how we speak to others. Are we trying to convey a notion of knowledge and confidence? Or does our gestures give away that we're really shy and nervous? So all of that matters in how we speak, the words we use, but also what we say is very, very important, and what we don't say is very important. So, for example, my doing this video, even though I can't see you, I see myself actually, but I know that I'm on a camera and this is going to be shared with others. So I'm on the front stage. Along with impression management, Goffman introduces the last two concepts, which are the front stage and the backstage. Again, you're staying with the theater model of social interaction. Front stage is whenever we're in the public realm, and it's on the front stage that we tend to work on our impression management. Backstage is outside the public arena. So on the backstage where we can let our hair down more and what we call be ourselves, and then get prepared to go out for the next front stage. So, for example, coming home from work, you can let your hair down, you can change your costume setting, you know, maybe you might imagine the group, maybe you're going to a dinner party, the people that are going to be there, you dress a different way for that setting. And so you're in the back region, putting yourself together. And then you go out and to the next front stage. Or it could be coming home, relaxing a bit, and then certainly you can be on front stage with your children as well, right? They can become your audience, playing the role of mother, status of mother or father. Uh, but I mean, dramaturgy is a theoretical symbolic interactionist model that can be used to analyze all kinds of social situations. And maybe I'll have you do a little discussion, have you think about this for a little while and analyze it in your own life. Let's just use the classroom setting since we started with that one, using dramaturgical model. And still keeping social structure, social statuses, and social roles in mind as we talk about this, because that's really what we're doing at that level of analysis. But on the everyday level, the real level, down close to down to earth level, we're involving ourselves in dramaturgical behavior. We can use the dramaturgical model. So in the classroom, even on this video, the way I talk, how I'm dressed, maybe not quite as formal sometimes as I am in class because I'm at home. But what I'm talking about is I'm trying to manage the impression I'm giving off as being a competent, caring, as well as a caring, competent instructor for the course. By providing this type of more personable presentation of materials, hoping that make you feel less alienated on an online course. And But it's a little different because I can't really see your reactions. Some of what impression management is based on is being able to gauge the reactions from the audience. So if you're putting students to sleep in the class, you may want to change your impression management. And many instructors, we negotiate this over time. Usually when you first start as a teacher, it may not be as always so. You may be a little bit nervous. You may be overdoing it. And over time, working with students in class, you begin to negotiate how you present yourself, how you present your material, uh, so that you're getting better feedback. Think about when you give student evaluations. That's what that process is really about, is trying to see, am I doing an adequate job? Not satisfying everybody, but overall the class as a whole from one semester to the next. What are the ongoing complaints, or negative comments? And then we look at those and say, okay, maybe I need to change that or go in a different direction. And hopefully after so many years you get this down. So when we gain tenure, for example, when we gain tenure, this kind of based on this notion that hey, you're doing a great job, and you're a great teacher, and so we want you to stay. Doesn't mean they want you not to improve on your. I've made many improvements, I think, since I gained tenure. Just keeping up with technology is one. But all that's dramaturgy. I don't, for example, you see me reaching over here and I'm grabbing water. Well, you presume it's water, but that's what what is it called? I don't even know what the name is. Purified water, right? And so, I mean, how do you know? It might be white whiskey or some liquor. Or, of course, if that was, I probably wouldn't be able to talk right after after doing that. But it's water. I'm not going to sit here and pull up a can of beer in front of the house, and sit here and drink beer and lecture on camera. Or I wouldn't even. Some people might do it. I don't know what university. Maybe where I went to school in Toronto, but I certainly would sit here and have a glass of wine. And some might do that, but I wouldn't do it. Because I would feel like it would be going against my impression management to the class. I'm not going to drink anything like that while I'm trying to convey a serious lecture material. That would be falling down on my impression management, right? Or if I wasn't kempt, I mean, if I was unkempt on camera, that would be being in the public with you, even though I can't see you, knowing that you're going to be watching this. I try to make sure I look okay enough or presentable to be here, and the reason being is that I'm on the front stage. I want a good review. I want a good response, even though I can't see you. That you will feel comfortable with me. You're not going to think, oh, he's odd, or he's unkempt, and what's he doing? You know, you know. Sometimes we joke about doing this kind of thing, that you can teach an online class. You don't, I might be sitting here with my pajamas on, or but I'm not. I've got my sweatpants. I got my exercise clothing on. But I think you get the gist of where I'm coming from. Now, one thing for you is I can't see you. So in terms of impression management, it's still involved. Think about it. What's the front stage for you in terms of, from my perspective in this interaction, is where would be the front stage? It's going to be in the discussion board, of course, right? Because that's where you go and you make yourself vulnerable to the audience by making your comments to the class and to me on our readings, for example, or our exercise or our videos. You're involved in impression management. You're not going to go on there and just make jokes and talk about willy-nilly and make an idiot of yourself. if you did that, then I would be writing you some email saying, "Hey, what's going on, Jim? What's the problem here? You're not, you're not." And another thing might be even just showing up. So I can't tell if you're coming to class late. I can't tell if you're even here during the week. But I can tell when you don't show up on the discussion board that maybe you're not, even for one of them. I mean, at least you can do one reading, right, and show up for one, so I can see that you're there and you're doing something, right? Uh, and then on the exams, the only impression management there is if you get high scores, I'm saying, oh, this person's. A lot of times I send emails out, to high scorers and say, congrats, doing a great job. And then those that aren't, I'll send out emails saying you need to study a little harder, and but when you don't take the exam at all, and I'm not just talking about this class, I have 2 other online classes. Students don't even show up and take the exam at all, and even after closing time, it's and no email. So, what kind of impression management is that? What am I supposed to think about that? So I'm thinking that this student's not even in the class, so I should drop them off the course. They didn't even care about taking the exam. They haven't shown up maybe even for the discussion board. So even though this technology does not allow so much a personal visual in terms of impression management, you guys can watch this anytime during the week, and so you got a lot more room, a little bit more maneuver room, but still, again, there's still that dramaturgy in front stage on the discussion board, on taking your exams, and so it's there nonetheless. And but when I leave the class, when I turn this off, when I'm away from the class, a lot of times I'm in the back region. I'm working on other class material, but I'm also working on this one. So don't think because you don't see me all week sometimes that I'm not uh, thinking about the class, what's coming up. I keep conscious of what chapter we're on, what readings that you're doing. Sometimes I don't always maybe comment on every post, but I do read those in due time, and I appreciate them. And so I like for my students to know I am a force. I'm here. I'm in the background, if you will, and so I'm always checking. You know, checking from the back region. I'm always thinking about what's next and putting the class together in the back region. So then you can take the front stage, backstage, look at all kinds of different scenarios. Think about the job interview. When you go to a job interview, you think about your props, your dress. You think about in your back region, right? You think about the backstage. You think about how you're going to talk to how are you going to appear physically, but also what you're going to say about certain aspects of your CV to the employer who's interviewing you. Sometimes we rehearse how we're going to talk about, say, gaps in our employment history. What am I going to say? You have to come up with something. The thing about an interview situation is that the interviewer is actually looking for you to slip in your impression management. They kind of know and they're kind of aware that you're involved in impression management. You're trying to put the best picture forward of yourself, and that you may be hiding something. So they look for those in the CV. They may try to ask you sort of tricky questions to see if they can get you to slip in your impression management. Uh, many times you can look at your work life as front stage, backstage. If you look at a restaurant, some of you have maybe worked in a restaurant. I have. On the front in the restaurant area, in a restaurant, one thing for impression management, in terms of social status, in terms of social class, many times you can tell of a restaurant simply by the name, but then looking at the exterior, and then looking certainly the interior, how it's decorated. A lot of times symbolically that tells us whether this place is a lower end restaurant or a really fine 5-star restaurant, simply by the name and the decor. Uh, and But in the restaurant, the front stage would be where the people are eating. The backstage would be the kitchen area. So things go on in the kitchen area that would never go on the front stage. Same thing in any other setting. There's things that we may do in the back region that we would never do in the front region, things we would say, for example, or how we talk or laugh, or uh, so in the back region of the kitchen is where, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, that's sometimes it can be quite hectic. People get angry with each other, with the cooks and chefs and each other, and there could be cursing going on, or there may be a lot of laughter, maybe making fun of some of the people that come in to eat into the restaurant, you know. But when you go out to wait on the tables, you're involved in the front stage. Then you go into your impression management. Why do you do that? Because you're trying to get what? You're trying to get a tip, right? So you're trying to put your best foot forward. So you want to have the persons, the family, whoever, you know, maybe you're trying to make the best impression by uh, seeming confident in your job, that you're quick. You know, you get to the table and take care of people's needs promptly. You don't make them wait on their drinks, for example, or their salads, even though you may be working 6 or 7 other tables right at the same time. You're trying to be on front stage with all of them. Uh, you smile. You don't look sad when you come to the table. You smile. You talk friendly, but you don't overdo it either, right? So we have to learn not to over impress. Then it comes off as phony, and if we spend too much time hovering around a table, then you may get a negative. They may want you to leave the table because you're taking up too much time, or you're taking up too much time and your boss is getting upset because you're not tending to other tables, right? But that's where impression management goes on. Very polite behavior, you know, doing a very competent job, and then that way you get your tip. Then you may go back into the back region after the family or people leave, and you may make all kinds of nasty comments about them, or say something derogatory about one of them, how they ate their food, whatever, you know, things they said, and sort of the backbiting kind of area is the back region. Um, and I remember when I worked in a upscale restaurant in Nashville, Tennessee, and I can remember I was a back waiter, and it's quite an upscale restaurant that catered to a lot of the people in the music business and producers, and even country music stars and their families would come in there. And so in our back region, we had this little guy that was a well-known chef in the town, the city, and but he would come in and undress, take off his heavier clothes if it was in the wintertime. He always worked in just a sleeveless T-shirt because it's hot in the kitchen, and he was very fast at his job, very very competent. But he would have 2 or 3 fires going, you know, cooking in the fry pans, 3 or 4 of them all at the same time. And a lot of times he would use white wine, red wine, big gallon jugs of Gallo wine on each side, pouring them into the steaks or whatever, you know, and going on. But every time he'd pour, he'd take a drink, and you know, halfway through the evening, he would be feeling pretty good. And he had 3rd-degree burns on his arms. He had these big patches from hitting the ovens, and he would get mad at us waiters and curse us, and get mad, drop something on the floor, wipe it off, put it back in the frying pan, steak, and clean it up, and put some more wine on it, and drink a little bit more wine. And he'd get mad, tell us to get that stuff, you know, get it out of his, you know what, kitchen, and get it downstairs quick. And just a real character. And so by the, you know, as I said, you know, in the evening, he's already had quite a bit of alcohol. Uh, but all of a sudden, one of the waiters would come up and say, "Hey, Mr. So and So downstairs would like to see you, like to give you a compliment." He would get out of his, he would dress up in his really nice, crisp chef's gown down to the floor, white, nice, crisp white hat, tall hat on his head. And he'd straighten up and go downstairs, and we used to watch him. He'd go to some table with some music industry person we knew, and just big smiles, always bowing graciously and shaking their hands, and they're saying, "Oh, your food was so great tonight." And he'd have a little. You could just tell he was just really playing his impression management. Then he'd walk back into the kitchen area and he'd wag his $100 bill in their faces and take those clothes off and tell us to get our, it's back to work and time to hit it. He'd continue doing what he was doing in the past, and but confident nonetheless in his impression management and his ability to do his occupation. But you can think of many other scenarios of front staging. And I think what I'll do is I'll put a little discussion board on the discussions and let you guys come up with some dramaturgical analysis involving your own lives at some point or presently, maybe an occupation or some team or some group you belong to. Something goes on at work, front stage and back. A lot of times, when the boss will walk in around the workers, all of a sudden all the workers look busy and they get into their impression management. And then when the supervisors leave, a lot of times, and they might snicker about them and say things behind their backs, and uh, you know, those everyday situations and workplaces where people slow down at work. They're not, supposed to be doing something on the computer, and maybe they're doing something else, playing a game or something on work time, and then the boss comes in. They all change that and get back to what they're supposed to be doing. And front stage, backstage. You can do this in all kinds of just about any situation. So I'm gonna put something on the discussion board about dramaturgy, and let you guys. I look forward to reading some of your imaginative writings on some of your experiences in your contemporary or even in your past group experiences with others. Okay, well, in looking at the rest of this chapter, front stage, backstage, impression management, attribution theory, I'll use that later. I'm not going to use that right now. So that's the end of the chapter. So I'm going to cut this off and load these up now. And I'll put that discussion board up for you. And I'll leave it open because of the weather and all we've had. It's slowed some people down. So we'll leave it open through the week, and then we'll start our next chapter on Sunday. All righty. So have a great weekend.